Let's see now. Gotta find out how I sound. Oh, that's really quiet. Oh, that's really quiet. Let's try that out instead. Let's try that out instead. Alright, so testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yeah, that works. Okay, yeah, that works. Then adjust the mic, and then I should be good to go. Okay, yeah, that works. Adjust the mic, and then I should be good to go. Oh, I gotta turn that off. Holy shit. Alright. Let's actually get this on the road. No one is here. That matters. I don't know who the fuck these two are, but that's fine. I think those are just bots anyways. Let's see. Right, okay. Alright. Let's start with, I think what I wanted to do was Psychic Sonic, because I know that game has been whooping people's ass for like a particularly long time. Let me turn down the volume a smidge. Oops. Alright, we are doing Psychic Sonic. Okay, so my day is going fantastic. I had a pretty good dinner, and I promised people that I would actually make some Shuffle Strats episode over the weekend. So now that the weekend is almost over, I am actually teaching. I'm actually following through on it. Hey, what's up, Shadow? Thanks for hopping by. I appreciate you coming. Let me know how my voice is in relation to the game audio itself. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is Psychic Sonic. Psychic Sonic is, that's right, I'm gonna need save states. I'm gonna need save states so I can do this so much faster. So Psychic Sonic is a Contrary to what the game tells you, this is not a game of chance. It's not a game about guessing. It is actually a reaction-based minigame, right? And a big thing about this particular game is that while you're playing it, right, you will get a card, and on the card is the button you're supposed to press, and you're supposed to press it at the right. You're supposed to press the button that it wants you to press. So what I will do is I'll show you like the first few. I'll show you like the first few cards, and then I'll go down. I'll go into breaking it down. So, with Psychic Sonic, like I said, it is a Twitch reaction-based game based on your ability to discern the scribble on the card and being able to press what the actual right button is, right? So, as you can see, everyone gets 4 cards, right? You get the X, Y, A, B, and that corresponds to the buttons on your controller, right? Now, from the pot in the center, a card will show up, and on that card, it'll rotate between these 4 buttons. And as it keeps rotating between the 4 buttons, one of the buttons will start to stand out more than the others. That button is what you have to press. And there is a general logic to it that is pretty easy to follow, but ultimately boils down to practice, because without practice, you're not going to be able to see the cues. So it will go through all 4 buttons first, just like one time. That's a single cycle, right? It'll show X, Y, A, B, and then after that, that's when the button legitimately starts to become very legible, becomes readable for the most part. It's actually technically readable within the first cycle, towards the end of the first cycle, and also on top of that, you can actually press the button that you need to press from the jump, but it usually takes until the end of the first cycle and the start of the second cycle for most people to be able to figure out what button you're supposed to press. So, I'm going to save state here. So, A, B, X, Y, A, B, X, Y, A, B, X, Y, and then after 2 cycles, the computers will usually kick in and then pick the button that you're supposed to press, right? 1, 2, 3. Right here, at this point after a single cycle is like, at least for me on average, is the earliest where you can tell what button you're supposed to press. I'll tell you how to get it later, like tomorrow we can talk about that, but not right now. So right now the button is X. That's the button. No, that's not X. That's the starting button, sorry. Right, there you go. The button is Y because the RNG wasn't reshuffled. But as you can see, as after the first cycle, the Y becomes way easier to tell compared to everything else. So it goes through the cycle once, and then you get the button that you're supposed to press. So because of this, once you get used to the style of how the card rotates, it becomes really easy to pick out what button you're supposed to press before anyone else. Now, it's not like I can open up Photoshop to show you exactly what to pick, but as you can just tell just by watching me, it's not something that you have to guess. Oh, that was a Y. Okay, so now that I've given you that example, here's the thing that I want to really talk about in terms of figuring out how to do Psychic Sonic. If you look at the cards to your side, or the cards on the side, basically your character's cards, right? X and B have very distinct designs and patterns, while Y and A have very similar patterns, or like when they're overlapped, they look very similar. And that's just mostly because on the left side of A and the left side of Y, they have the same general curvature, right? So the trick to figuring out what button to press and when boils down to your ability to, one, tell immediately if it's an X or B. Because they're so distinct from each other and all the other cards, you have to, step 1, find out if it's an X or B, and if it is not an X or B, you need to figure out if it's a Y or an A. Now, because Y and A look so close to each other, what happens is that you have to look for some sort of key. So like right here, if you look at the top right of the card in the center, you see this little round section where the Y, or where the Y is, that little round edge towards the top right of Y. That is what I personally use to specifically let me know that a Y is on top. And to the actually, maybe what I should do is, this might help if I can show cursor. Can I show cursor? Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay, fantastic. All right, so the top right of this part of the card lets you know that it's a Y, okay? And then this little tail, this little pointy part right here lets you know that it's an X, right? And then with A is easy to tell in the sense that it's very clearly an A over everything else. So this, if you see it look like this, that means it's an A, right? But as the cycles go, like on the second cycle, this part of the Y starts to stand out more than anything else. So if you see this little bump right here, it's a Y, and if you don't see this little bump, that's an A. And this is after you've discerned whether it's not an X or B. So bam, that is a Y. So we're gonna go through one cycle. Okay, so now we have done one cycle, so now the card that you want to pick is going to be very clear to see. In this case, it's a B. And, okay, there you go. I don't know why it was acting up like that. The B stands out more than everything else. So here, there you go. Why? Because the little bump stood out over everything else. And this is an A because, oh, see, the A and the Y tripped me up. That's probably the hardest part about this particular game. B. And another B. So, I guess to regurgitate it all pretty quickly is the two things that you need to do in order to really iron out this game is to figure out if it's an X or a B first. The X is pretty clear because the sides of the X are distinct from everything else. You can't find that anywhere else. So as a result, if you don't see this X, then you can rule that out. And because the B stands out for the bottom right of the card, if you don't see this little bottom part of the B, that means it's neither X or B, and therefore you start looking to see if you can find the little loop of Y. And once you can figure out if there is the loop of Y or there isn't, then you know if it's a Y or A. So ultimately you're processing, you're going through a process of elimination incredibly quickly where you start with X and B and then you look for a Y, and then that from there on out, that's how you figure out what card it is for Psychic Sonic. So let me load up save state 1 so that I can get a new seed for the card RNG. I wish there was like a slowdown button. Maybe I should have done this in RetroArch. Alright, so
2, 1, go!
Alright, so first one is A. The second one is A. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to pause exactly when I can recognize it. B. There you go. So this form of B stands out more than anything else. So for the rest of this card, the B is going to be more visible. So I recognize it was a B simply because of this bottom right section. Bottom right, bottom half, so on and so forth. Because of this section right here, I was able to tell it was a B. And with this next card, it is that is an X. Because of these little two things that stick out on the side before, and then also there's a lack of closed loops. Because there's a lack of closed loops on the outside, if you don't see any sort of loop, because with the Y you see this little loop over here, with the B you see this little loop down here, and then with the A you see this little loop on the side. There's always some sort of curvature, some relatively soft curvature that's happening on one side of the card. And when you don't see this curvature, that's another way to tell if it's an X or not. And B. Again, bottom half right here. A. And the reason why I say it was an A is because when the A showed up, it was very clear. That's like the easiest way to tell if it's an A as well, is if it just shoots to your head, shoots into your mind, the first word A. It's so clear because it's at that point, it's an A overlapping an A. So the way Psychic Sonic works is while it is showing all four face buttons, right? The actual correct button to press is layered underneath it. And as time goes on, the transparency of the right button layered underneath it increases. So the button you're supposed to press becomes more visible as time goes on. But the letter and the letters that you're not supposed to press, the letters that it's confusing you with, become invisible as time goes on. So for A, if it's very clear immediately after the first cycle that you see an A, if that's the first thing that you see, then it's an A. If you're not too sure if it's an A after the first cycle, then it most likely is a Y, and at that point you need to look for this top loop, this top curve that shows up in the top right of the card. So that's how I personally go about figuring out whether it's an A or a Y after discerning whether it is not an X or a B. A. See? Bam. You see how clear that A is, how legible that A is? That's how you know it is an A. Because if it was any other number, it would not be this clean, this easy to read immediately after the cycle ends, after the first cycle ends. So I guess I'll summarize it once more. The way to really get good at, because of course regardless you have to practice, the way to get good at Psychic Sonic is 1. Wait for the first cycle to pass. A cycle is when it goes through all four face buttons at first, or just period, right? When it goes through all four face buttons and then starts over, that is one cycle. So again, A, B, X, Y. 2, once the first cycle passes, you need to immediately tell if it is an X or a B. And you can tell it's an X from the jump if you can see this little line through the X. If that stands out after the first cycle and you see no curvatures, no loops, no soft parts on the outside of the letter, then it's an X. Because again, this Y has this loops, this little soft curvature on the top right, the B has this curvature on the bottom, and the A has this curvature on the left. If you look at the curvatures from A, Y, and B, they almost make a complete circle, right? So if you fail to see any curvatures on the outside and you also notice the line through the X, then it's an X. Now, if you can confirm that it is not an X, what you want to look for is you look at the bottom. And if you can see this curvature on the bottom right here, then it's a B. And that's the first thing you have to do after waiting for the cycle. You need to figure out if it is a X or is a B. And if it is not an X or a B, then at that point you need to shift your focus to 2 other things, which then brings us to the next step. You need to look for the soft curvature in the top right, or you need to see if the letter A is incredibly legible over everything else. So if you can follow this process for Psychic Sonic, you're basically going from X, B, Y, and A in terms of process of elimination, and that's how you are able to be like, okay, I know what button to press. And if you can really get a handle on that, really feel it deep down in your soul, you'll wash the computers and you'll most likely wash all the other players every single time. Because your ability to process this information and go through this process of elimination as fast as possible is the trick to being good at Psychic Sonic. So I hope that helps anyone who sees this in the future how to play this particular game very well. So let's just cut that off for that shuffled strat, and then let's go to number jump. Right, number jump was something that people were having issues with because Because the thing is about number jump, right, is it feels like you have to mash the A button in order to get from 1 to 10 or 11 as soon as possible. And for the most part, that actually does work. But really, there's a little bit of more nuance to it, though. Unfortunately, because the game isn't that well designed, the nuance is not always applicable. So, like 80% of the time, you truly can just mash and then win no problem. It really does boil down to who the fastest masher is. But there are some situations where mindlessly mashing will end up causing you to lose, either through a timeout or someone getting the jump on you. So let's go ahead and talk about number jump. Number jump is pretty easy, especially if you played Sonic Adventure 1 on at least gone through Emerald Coast and had to deal with the jump panels in that game, right? So, number jump. You have to jump from each number in order, right? You can't jump from 1 to 3 and 3 to 7 and then 7 to 10. You have to go up the ladder incrementally one by one. So here is the first tip for playing Shuffle Straps, right? Or for playing Number Jump. At this point in the game, you should already be trying to read and analyze the order of the number because of how long it takes to actually get the game started. So right here, right, you can already see everything that you need to know. So for me personally, I'm scanning to see if everything is in order, and usually it is. So I can see the 0, the 1, the 2. Let me use my mouse. I can see the 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So once you confirm, because it's not always like this, once you confirm that there's a clear path from 0 to 10 or 0 to 11, then you can start mashing, right? But what you need to be weary about is, as you can see, there's only 3 1s, right? And then there's only, let's see, 2 2s, and there's only 1 3 actually. And let's see, 1 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6s, a 7, 1 8, 1 9, and 2 10s, right? But here's the thing, something that a lot of people don't realize for fair reason, is with this 10, if you land on this 10, you cannot jump to this 10. Okay? If you try to go from, if for some reason you find yourself on a 10 and there's a 10 here, if you try to jump, you'll miss because you need to go up in value by 1 every single time you jump. So what this also tells me is that this 10 will actually alternate between 10 and 11 in the middle of the game. And then also, while the game is going, right, these platforms will rotate inward. So if I'm on this 8, yes, in number order. If I'm on this 8, right, and I wait too long, it's going to rotate inwards and I'll fall off because you can't be on the panel when the number is no longer visible. So there's like I said, there's like a bit of nuance to this game, but 80% of the time you don't have to pay attention to it. But as a result of this nuance being important rarely, there are times where you will lose the game simply because you're not paying attention to this nuance. So from 0, I jump from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you see how now, you can see now how the 8 that I was going to jump to rotated inward. If I jumped to that 8, I would have fallen off. Now there is a new 8, so I can jump to that 8. And then also the platform at the top for winning is now at an 11. So I'd have to jump from 10 to 11. If I was on a 9 and tried jumping to the 10, and before I jumped it alternated to 11, I'd fall off. And as you can see, I think, okay, yeah, Amy fell off at some point. So another thing about number jump is because there's a limited amount of space, right? If, for example, you see how Knuckles is on 4, if all the 5s were occupied, because there are 3 5s right now, so if me, Sonic, and Amy were on all 3 5s, Knuckles can't actually jump from anything. The game won't let him jump. And if he tries to jump at that point, he'll fall off and have to start over from the bottom. So while you are jumping, what you're supposed to do, what they intended you for to do, is to keep an eye on what number you have to jump to next, and if it is available to jump to. If it is not available, if the next number you're supposed to jump to is not available, you'll fall right off. So that's why they kind of try to cause some chaos by having different or varying amounts of availability for each number in the chain. So I'm at a 7, I'm going to jump to an 8, jump to a 9, and then I can jump to a 10. So also, if you're being smart about it, right? If you are not at a 10 yet, and like you're at an 8, and it's alternating between 10 and 11 or 9 and 10, right? Waiting to waiting for the center number to increment to the number that you need to so that you can jump is also a very good strategy. Because while it was an 11, I could have just jumped from 9 to 10 and then from 10 to 11. But by waiting on 9, I do two things. I block 1 9, and I also make it so that I don't accidentally jump to a number that I'm not supposed to or I don't want to because the center number alternated to a different number while right before I jumped. So by occupying the 9 space, because at this point in the game, right, if you can look at the current tower, there's no 9s. So had I had stayed in that 9, no one else would be able to get to a 9. And then I can freely just wait for the center number to go to back to a 10, and then I can finish the game for the easy win. So this game had an idea, right? They were trying to cook with this, but they didn't actually get to they didn't actually get the execution down properly. And I think that's like probably the biggest issue with number jump, because again, you can just mindlessly mash most of the time, and it'll be not that big of an issue. So that's number jump. I ultimately think it's pretty simple, but just understanding the nuances of how the game works makes it so that you can win 100% of the time as long as you can mash faster than the other people. Because while you're jumping, because especially since the numbers can be very far apart, during that jump, you can't really do anything. So you're supposed to take the time during each jump to look to see where the next spot you're supposed to go is, and if it's available, so that you don't end up jumping off and missing and then having to start over. So that's how number jump works, and I think that about does it for that one without much issues. So okay, from there, people had questions about jump to snake. I think jump to snake is incredibly simple. It is an endless minigame that will not end until there's only one person left. So what I will do is I'll do one single game, and there is some cool stuff to learn about jump to snake, but it's really actually nothing too complex. It's super simple. So with jump to snake, right? You are standing on a platform. Unfortunately, I can't move the menu out of the way, but you're standing on a platform, right? As you can see, I'm right there. And out of these little Eggman circle capsule things, these are actually entrances or exits or whatever, right? Basically, a snake will come out of one of them, and then it will swirl around in a circle like you're playing jump rope, and you're supposed to avoid the snake. So, just like this, and then bam, and then you're supposed to jump and then not get hit, because otherwise you'll get knocked off and you lose the game. Now, here is some important things to take note about jump to snake, right? The snake will come and then it'll do loops for a random number, right? So it might do one loop and then leave, or it may do 10 loops and then leave, right? So you're supposed to keep vigilant and make sure that you're paying attention to the snake at all times. Once it leaves, it will randomly come out of another hole. There are 4 holes. There is northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast, right? But the thing about this game is that after a certain amount of time, the space will start to rotate. So the platforms that we're standing on will start to rotate, I believe, clockwise, and then the walls will start to rotate counterclockwise. But speaking of clockwise and counterclockwise, right? The snake will always rotate in a clockwise fashion. So if you can properly orient yourself, or rather orient the snake, you can tell which direction the snake will start in. So since this snake is coming in from the north, from its perspective, clockwise will be, from our perspective, going this way, right? So the snake is coming down this way, so the snake will start moving this way, right? There you go. And this is the static rule. This is like the only guaranteed, like, no bullshit, no random logic for the snake. It would always move in a clockwise fashion relative to its own position. So, as long as you keep this in mind, it becomes way easier to tell which way the snake is going to go. And the reason why they do it like this is so that they can throw off your timing, essentially, right? Because once the platforms start rotating, and then once the walls start rotating and the snake starts speeding up, because eventually, as the game goes on, if people aren't dying, the snake will start to come in faster, rotate faster, and then leave faster. Okay, the AI is too easy, so I'm going to go back and then increase the difficulty on the AI. Okay. Jump the snake. So hopefully they last a lot longer this time. Eventually the CPU is forced to lose. Because I'm pretty sure as time goes on, because like for games like this, the CPU has like a chance to just fuck up every single cycle or loop or whatever. And at some point it's just going to fail the button check. Or fail the check that it needs to successfully keep going on the game. So at least against the computers, it's just a matter of endurance. Overall, the game is a matter of endurance, but specifically for the CPUs, you just gotta hold out long enough. And usually they don't last so long past the third level of speed. That's also a thing about the Snake and Jump the Snake, is that they have 3 tiers of speed. And after you get to the 3rd tier of speed, at that point, it starts to become essential to know not to jump the full height, because jumps in this particular game, or in this mini game, actually have variable height. So knowing when to do a short jump, knowing when to do a short jump, right, is important, especially at the 3rd level of speed. So we'll show you one full game, so you know what it looks like. Well, hopefully they can last a full all the way up to level 3. If not, I might just have to do... Okay, so now he's coming from our perspective, southwest, right? So for his perspective, clockwise is going to go this way. So once you're able to correctly understand, oh, there goes the rotation. And then this is also where stuff starts to get more complicated, because despite the rotation of the platform, right? Despite the rotation of the platform and the rotation of the wall, the snake maintains the clockwise movement. So you always have to try your best to figure out what rotation or what way the snake will rotate for you specifically, because the orientation causes the rotation of the snake to feel like it's different. So right now we're on the 2nd speed threshold, right? So if the AI can last a little bit longer, what will happen is we'll reach the 3rd threshold, and then that's where you can't get away exclusively using the largest jump possible. And also, as you can tell, the amount of times the snake will force you to jump is random within a range. Okay, this is the 3rd tier speed. Now, the thing is about the 3rd tier speed, right, is once you reach the 3rd tier speed, that's the maximum speed. It will not get faster. So you don't actually have to worry about the game speeding up to the point where it becomes impossible for you to keep up, and then somebody just lucks out and gets the win just because they happen to guess the right timing or whatever. So as a result, because there's no timer and the speed maxes out, it truly does become a game of endurance. So I've had games, I think I had a game not too long ago, where this particular minigame lasted like 2 minutes, which is a very long time because we were running at the highest speed possible, and for me, it eventually started to wear down my nerves because you're supposed to keep a sort of mental stamina so that you can parse all the information that's going on and maintain a level of skill. So, when you're playing with other people who know how to do this game, the game can go on for an incredibly long time. So, this is why I call this an endurance game that's also strictly skill based. Of course, even if you don't have all this knowledge, right, that I have, you can still last pretty long in this game off of reactions alone because the snake is not so fast that you can't just, deal with it. However, the third level of speed is usually fast enough that it throws you off because there isn't much warning. The only indication that you've reached the third level of speed is how fast the snake comes in. Because every level of speed that you go up in, not only does the snake swing faster, it also enters and leaves faster, like I said earlier. So the entrance of the snake is your only clue as to how fast the snake will be. So if you're not prepared for that, if you don't have that knowledge, the snake entering the third level of speed usually throws off a lot of people who aren't familiar enough with it, and if they don't have a good enough of a reaction time. But the reason why people may fall for it is not even because they don't have a reaction time, but they don't know how to parse how the snake is going to move. And that's one of the reasons why I think knowing that the snake is always moving clockwise is important. Because the disorientation that the rotation of the platform and walls do make it so that it masks the very simple fact that, again, the snake moves clockwise. And if you don't think about that, you think it may rotate to the left or it may rotate to the right, when really it always rotates in the same direction. The orientation just makes it seem like it's going from the left to the right, right? So, if you are not sure if it's going to rotate to the left or rotate to the right because you don't know it always moves counterclockwise, then you're thinking about, okay, which way is it going to come? And that thought, that decision making adds to the mental stack, which can slow down your reaction time. And if your reaction time slows down, right, you're also not really going to notice or react to the speed of which the snake shows up in. So, because again, that's the clue to let you know what tier of speed you're in. So, if you don't know how it's going to move, you don't know that the entrance is the indicator of the speed, the level of speed that it's at, then usually what ends up happening is people get thrown off timing-wise, and they do a full jump. Because also that's another thing that distracts, or that's another thing that plays a trick on you, right? Because the first and second level of speed for jump to snake, you can use a full jump the whole time and do just fine. But with the third level of speed, you using a full jump can actually very quickly result in you losing because it goes so fast and the full jump is so long. By the time you land, you don't actually have enough time to jump and reach a height that allows you to clear the snake. So that's kind of like the cutoff. Like going from 2 to 3 is kind of like the cutoff point for most people, where the game typically starts to end for a lot of people. So with that information in mind, I'll summarize it. The snake always moves clockwise, no matter what direction it comes in. The platform will rotate clockwise while the walls move counterclockwise. The snake will come in from one of 4 different directions, but no matter what, it'll always be clockwise. There are 3 levels of speed. On the third level of speed, full jumps can spell your end, and the animation of the snake coming onto the screen is your biggest clue as to how fast the snake will move, because the snake rotating, or the snake jump roping or whatever, is like proportionately speedy as the exiting and entering animations. So with all that information in mind, once you start to like really internalize it, so that you can think less about what to do or what to look for and just react faster, that's how you get to the point where you can essentially play this game forever. Because I think when I was controlling all 4 players by myself, I was able to last 5 minutes with no issue. Because one thing that this game also hides from you is that the timing for jumping over the snake successfully is actually, or rather the window of successfully jumping over the snake is actually very broad. right? It's not like some sort of super tight timing. No, it's very, very loose because the game is deliberately designed in a way to distract you from how generous the timing is by throwing you off with a bunch of red herrings in terms of how fast it's going to go, when it's going to speed up, if it speeds up, what directions it's coming in, so on and so forth. So that's Jump the Snake. I think it's a really good game. I think it's very skill based, and I think it rewards you for learning all the nuances of the games by giving you a clarity of mind and the ability to parse less information on purpose and or subconsciously. So I think that about does it for Jump the Snake. Now what else did we have? Shoddy Work. Right. Shoddy Work was a game that seemed to confuse people. I think for this, I need to be player 2, or I need to be on the bottom. This one I'm actually still researching because there's some weird things about it that I'm not entirely sure why it works the way that it does, but I do have a generally strong idea about how this game is supposed to play. Okay, so Shoddy Work is a game where the person on top gets a block, right? And they can do two things with the block, no, three things with the block, right? They can drop the block and the block falls down Tetris style. They can rotate the block before dropping it, or they can discard the block and throw it away and get a new block, right? And the player on the bottom can do two things. They can move left and right, bleh. They can move left and right, and then they can jump. And the way jump works is for the last piece that was placed onto the platform, and before a new piece is dropped, you can jump to readjust that piece. Now, if you try to jump and readjust a piece while a piece is falling, the oldest piece will bounce off of your platform and be discarded. So I'll show you these things as I play the game.
2, 1.
Uh-oh. Okay, yeah, we're good. We are good.
Go.
So here Sonic has, right? Sonic and Knuckles have a piece, and then Knuckles discarded it immediately because he didn't like the piece, and then Sonic dropped it, right? And then while it's dropping, I can move, right? And then bam, every time as I jump, I can replace the move, right? And here's what happens. You see, when you try to replace a move while a block is in the middle of moving, the old block, at least usually, the old block will be discarded and only the new block will remain. So, now the thing about this game, right, is that you're supposed to fill in the blocks as much as possible. But here's a trick that I think a lot of people don't know, with good reason, for many reasons, right, is when a block has been set, it cannot be moved by another block. So, I'll show you real quick. Okay, so as you can see, the second red block is falling. Now see? Now, as you see me move into it, my character stops moving because I can't actually move the block in air. So you can use that to really get some nice hugging going on, so that it's easier for you to place blocks within the space that you're supposed to be placing them in. And then, of course, the person who has the most space filled in and is not out of the lines is the winner. I don't know the exact science of what determines who wins or who loses. I've seen some really weird wins. Specifically, a win where my team had way less space filled in than the other one, but we still won. It's like I said, it's something I gotta figure out. But I think ultimately it is pretty easy, and with a little bit of practice and just a little bit of patience and know-how, you can pretty much win a vast majority of the time with that. Okay, so that was strats for Shoddy Work, strats for Jump the Snake, strats for Number Jump, and strats for Psychic Sonic. I think the only strat I have left to talk about would be Shoddy, or would be for Dueling. Now, Dueling, that is... a whole fucking thing, right? Um, Dueling is a gimmick or a feature exclusive to versus mode, right? You'll never get this in story mode, so you don't have to worry about it if you're only playing story mode. But for people who are playing with, for those of y'all who are playing with other people and are playing versus mode, dueling definitely is something that you should really learn. So, let me set up a game real quick. Oh wow. Let's see. Let's see. I want to get second. Yeah, I want to get second. I want to get second. So I'm just gonna use save states to force myself to get second place. Okay. Oh man. Well, I guess I don't need second. I can guess third works just fine. Oh jeez. Yeah, third works fine. I gotta use my mouse cursor better next time. Alright, so I need one of you idiots to get a 6, but not two of you idiots to get a 6. Or a 2, that works too, I guess. Remember, kids, always get criticals on regular monsters so you can steal twice as many rings from the opponent. And then also remember, spinners are not random. You can time your spinners to always get the results that you want. Alright, we got a 6, boys! I think Chow had 1 6, so I should have... Ooh, the chances of me having another 6 are kind of low, it seems like. Yep. Alright, I will just time an S, and then that'll be it. Sorry about that. Alright, so... Duels will happen if you land on the same space as another player, and the space that has been landing on is a ring space or a battle space. If it is an event space, or like basically if it is not a ring space or a battle space, you cannot duel them. So if you are scared of duels, if you're scared of getting into a duel, you must avoid letting yourself land on a battle space or a ring space. Doesn't matter what, if it's red or blue ring, they both count the same. So once you land on a space, you will trigger a duel. Now, here's one important thing for figuring out who participates in a duel. The people who participate in the duel, because as you can probably expect, 4 people can land on one space, right? The people who participate in the duel are the person who has spent the most amount of time on that space. In this case, it is Gamma, because he got there first before anyone else, and the person who most recently landed on the space, which would be me. So if Chow had picked a 6 for whatever reason, right, and then Gamma landed and they dueled, and then I picked a 6 and then landed on the space where Chow and Gamma have landed on, I will duel Chow, not Gamma, because Chow was there first and I was there last. So the people who are in between first and last don't get to participate in duels. That is something that you can use to strategize with, so that you can avoid dueling people that you don't want to duel while getting in duels yourself. So always keep that in mind with duels. It's always the participants will always be the first and last. Now, as you can see, there is a whole deck of cards, right? Specifically, though, there are 7, 14, 21, 20. It's a full deck of cards, right? So there are 4 ones, 4 twos, 4 threes, 4 fives, 4 sixes, 3 S's, and then 1 Eggman card. And then there are 4 of these red 4s, right? The red 4s, or not red 4s, green 4s, fucking colorblind. The green 4s are called Eggman 4s, and Eggman 4s will give you a -5, as you can tell, or -4, as you can tell by the bottom of the text, right? The S card, when somebody gets an S card, I'm using my finger to point, but you can't see it. When somebody gets an S card, right? If I pressed the A button and I took the S card for myself, my number would turn blue. While my number is blue, the value of all cards that I collect, except the Eggman 4s, will be doubled. So if I grab an S and then I immediately grab a 6, I'll get a 12. The duration of S cards is about 1 second. If somebody gets an Eggman card, which would be this, all the cards that they own will return to the field in random spots. And just because of that is incredibly important, because 90% of the time, the winner of a duel is the person who actually uses the Eggman card, not avoids it. You actually want to use the Eggman card, despite what your what your heart may want to tell you to, right? Because in this game, also very important, right? The winner is determined by who has either the lowest score or the highest score. The victory condition, of which there are 2, is random. So when you get into a duel, you may lose from having a higher number because the victory condition was lowest total. In this case, right now, it is lowest total score. So I don't want to collect cards. But if you don't want to collect cards, how do you win? And this is where the next part of the rules come in handy, right? So, lowest total wins, and the buttons. For the players who are dueling, the A button will take the card for yourself, while the B button will send the card to your enemy. And then this is where the fucking fighting happens, like for real. This is where the crazy shit happens. So in this case, because the win conditions for dueling is lowest score possible, what this means is the Eggman 4s I want to collect for myself, and I want to send the S cards to Gamma while also sending him the big cards. So for lowest total for me, I would send him an S card with the B button and then send him a 6 while the S card is doubling his score, so that he'd start with a 12, right? And then what I would also want to do is take the Eggman card for myself so that I can, one, any cards that he sends me will be returned to the field, because now that this is lowest, Gamma is going to be sending me cards. He's not going to be taking cards for himself outside of the Eggman 4s, right? So he's going to be sending me cards. I want to take the Eggman card for myself so that I can return all the cards I have to the field. Now, here's the thing about the Eggman card, right? The Eggman card, when it hits the character model, because it'll travel across the screen, once this card actually touches Tails or touches Gamma, they will get stunned. They will fall down, and during this stun animation, they cannot move. It lasts for, they're stunned for about a second, I believe. Or 2 seconds or something like that. That period where they cannot move because they're being stunned by the Eggman card is actually a window of opportunity. And based upon when you grab the Eggman card, simply just using the Eggman card too early can still result in you losing, right? So like, for example, because the win condition is lowest total, if I go straight to the Eggman card and then use it on myself, right? Because one, you want to use the Eggman card to help you secure your victory, but 2, using the Eggman card locks the other player out of using it because the Eggman card will return all cards to the field except the Eggman card. So once the Eggman card is used, there's no more Eggman card, right? For the rest of the duel, no more Eggman card. So it's kind of like God Fist Rush and Hokuto no Ken, the fighting game, right? Where the first person who does the little dash animation, well, shit, that's a deep cut of a fighting game. I don't even know how much of y'all will understand that. But anyway, in Hokuto no Ken for the PS2, there's like this dash mechanic where you get the boost forward, right? It's called boost. And the ability to use boost is limited in the sense of when one person uses boost, the other person can't use boost for a while. It's kind of like that, right? So if I use the Eggman card, he can't use the Eggman card. But if I use it immediately, like right now, if I use it immediately with the intention of locking him out, me being stunned for like a second or so gives him the opportunity to send as many cards as he wants. So, kind of what the strategy or the meta game boils down to is you want to use the Eggman card at the right time, not too early or not too late. Because if it's too early, you make yourself too vulnerable for too long, where there's not much at stake, and then you can just get fucked over, right? But if you use it too late, the other person's gonna get it. So you gotta. It's kind of like a game of chicken, right? You gotta figure out when exactly to use the Eggman card, whether you want to send it to yourself or send it to the opponent, depending on the win condition, so that you can maximize your chance of actually winning the duel. Because when you win the duel, two things will happen. The difference in score determines how many rings you steal from the opponent. So if I ended the game with 50 score and Gamma ended the game with 20 score, the difference is 30, so I will take 30 rings from Gamma. Or up to 30, or either 30 rings or however many they have left. Because if they have less than 30 rings, I just take everything that they got. So, it's important to know how to use the Eggman card and when to use the Eggman card. Because also, on top of taking their rings, the loser has to wait one turn. They lose their next turn. So that's also very important. So, with the lowest score as the win condition, kind of what ends up happening, at least in my experience, is depending on the order of the deck, because sometimes you'll get the distribution, the weighting of the numbers is not balanced. There have been games, right, where on my opponent's side they get S's and 5s and 6s and 4s, and then on my side I get the Eggman, but I also get 1s and 2s and 3s. So the distribution of cards is completely random. There's nothing you can do about it, and that's also why this Eggman card is very problematic, because as you can see, it spawned all the way over here, right? All the way over here, so it's much easier for my opponent to get to the Eggman card than I can, than it is for me, right? So sometimes you just get fucked from the jump. I've had games where the Eggman card spawned directly on my cursor, and vice versa, where it spawned directly on their cursor, and there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to hold that L. Your ability to create very strong impromptu tactics on how to handle the situation is your biggest method of dealing with the randomness of how the card layout is. So, now that you have that general idea, only other thing that you need to know is that the non-dueling players can use the A and B button to rotate the cards in a counterclockwise or clockwise order. They will rotate 4 cards. And the non-dueling players can use that to influence the game in a particular way to help somebody that they want to win, or make sure that somebody that they don't like will lose. Now, moving on, right? This game has one big issue with it outside of the randomness. It's something called port priority. If me and Gamma tried to grab the same card on the same exact frame, right? I will get the card because of my because of port priority. That is very important to take into consideration, and not that it'll happen often, but that's just the number one issue with this particular game. So, now that you have this general idea, what ends up happening is the cards will then be made face down, and then the game will shuffle sections of the card. So as you can see, I stunned myself, but now he doesn't have access to the Eggman card. So, what in the world? Alright, bruh. let me get rid of this message. Thank you. And homeboy, I need you to like not do that. Just that. There you go. Anywho, um, fucking lost my train of thought. So when the Eggman has been used up, at that point it kind of turns into a APM contest, right? Whoever can pick cards or send cards the fastest tends to be the winner, assuming there isn't like a huge gap in score already. So unfortunately, Gamma doesn't have any rings. So oh, wait, why doesn't he have any rings? Whatever, it doesn't really matter. That's the general essence of duels. So, the easiest way to boil down duels is one, always read the instructions because. Let's see, okay, lowest total. Always read the instructions because the win condition will randomly switch between highest total and lowest total, right? Two, oh look, the Eggman card is in a completely different place now. Yep. So the Eggman card is in the top center, so it is. Let's see, it's technically closer to me than it is to Gamma, so I have an easier time winning this game than Gamma did compared to the last game. So one, always read the instructions. Two, always have a good idea of when to send the Eggman card. When to send the Eggman card determines also on the win condition. For highest total, you usually want to send the Eggman card right away because during that stun period, you can just grab all the good cards and then that'll lock them out of winning because it's a bit of a first past the post affair. Once you get to a certain score, they cannot win with the remaining cards. Okay? So, for highest total, you usually want to get to the Eggman card first, but for lowest total, it kind of depends. So, knowing when to use the Eggman card based on the win condition is also incredibly important. And two, right? You want to keep in mind when to use what cards in the field, because there are 3 S cards, and S cards can be incredibly useful if you use them properly. They only ask for 1 second though, so you need to have a general idea or some sort of game plan in terms of figuring out how you want to use the S cards. And 3, when it comes to grabbing cards, you want to alternate inputs. You don't want to mash them at the same time. So you want to press left when you're not pressing X and press X when you're not pressing X. Because if you alternate cards, and if you alternate the inputs for cards, that's how you're able to grab cards as fast as possible. Because with this type of speed, no one can really beat you. So just off of speed alone, I was able to get all the cards for myself, use the Eggman cards, and then send all the cards to him before the computer can do something. Now, of course, if you're playing against another player, they're going to be competing theoretically at the same speed as you are. So, being able to pick cards faster than them, knowing when and when not to use the Eggman cards, knowing when and when not to use the S cards, knowing what win condition is, because the strategies will change depending on the win condition. So knowing what strategies to use based on lowest score or highest score, those are like the keys. Those are what's really important to winning duels. That all being said, despite this knowledge and being skilled at the game, you very well may be fucked because of Eggman spawn RNG. Because again, if the Eggman happens to spawn really, really close to you or really, really close to the opponent, there may not be anything that you can do about it. So, okay, let's see. Let me see if I can get one that spawns really, really close so you have a really good idea of what I'm talking about. Nope. But, I think that about does it for duels in terms of just getting you to a due point. Okay, see? This Eggman is incredibly close to me. In a situation like this, let's see, is it highest? Yeah, in a situation like this is an unwinnable duel. Like, no cap. This is an unwinnable duel for Gamma. Because, as you can see, right, not only is the Eggman card on my side, very close to me, and its highest wins, but look at my starting cards. I have a 5, a 6, a 6, an S, and a 6. All in my first initial 2 columns. And then on top of that, I have an S card right here and an S card right here. That is an incredibly biased side. And sometimes you'll get card distributions like this that you can't do anything about. And that is what it is. Sometimes it just be like that. But, whatever. That's just how the curtains close, right? That's how the dice roll. You have to be aware of this risk when intentionally triggering a duel with an opponent. You have to be aware that sometimes you may just get fucked by bad card spawn RNG, and you just kind of have to hold that. Because if this game had triggered the duel, right, and I was on the right side, and this godlike side was for me on the right hand side or whatever, right, he'd just be like, oh well, I triggered this duel, but it's unwinnable for me as long as my opponent isn't completely inept at dueling. Like he's got good APM, he's got good awareness, stuff like that. Because while the duel is happening, the cards will flash face up so that you can see where the cards are. So you don't actually have to memorize it. It's not as much of a guess game as you may actually think. So that type of stuff always got to be aware of. And whenever you duel, that's just the risk that you gotta hold. But all things considered, I think dueling for the most part is a pretty good, really a pretty good mechanic because the resting of a turn from losing is incredibly important in shaking up the situation that's going on the board. Because typically the player who moves first has an advantage because they can get to the stone before everyone else because it's like turn based, right? And dueling is how you shake that up. Dueling and items, right? Is how you personally take matters into your own hands to shake it up so that they can't actually win, right? Because yeah, you can get into a mini event and a mini event makes you rest or whatever, or you can use an item and da 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 da. But like dueling is definitely how you shake things up because not only can you steal a bunch of rings, you force them to wait for a turn and make it so that they're basically going last, right? So whenever you're playing versus mode, these are like things that you got to keep in mind. Uh, let's see. I'm not sure there's anything else off the top of my head that I need to talk about. So I think that about does it for now. Um, if anyone does have things that they want, if anyone does something that they want me to talk about, just let me know, like on Twitter or in the Sonic Shuffle NetPlay server, and then I'll just put it on the to-do list for things to talk about. But yeah, hopefully this has been pretty informative for y'all. And the VOD will go up on stream, and then I'll separate. Not only will I put the whole VOD on the stream, but also separate the specific sections that I need to, and then put those on like Twitter or put those in their own video to upload to YouTube as well for the Shuffle Strats playlist. Anywho, thanks to everyone for stopping by. I appreciate y'all's company, and I hope y'all learned something. Until the next time, peace out, y'all.